We've just been listening to President Trump talking about trade talks with China and a new executive order on drug prices. The president calls the talks in Geneva very friendly and says he could speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the end of the week. He also says China has agreed to remove its non-monetary barriers and open up to American trade. Trump also announced a new executive order aimed at lowering drug prices, calling it one of the most consequential orders in history. He says the order forces drug companies to charge the U.S. what they charge other developed countries, adding that the U.S. will no longer subsidize health care of foreign countries. Let's bring in senior White House correspondent Selena Wang and RSM U.S. chief economist Joe Bruce for more. Selena, let's start with these trade talks with China. What's the latest on this 90-day tariff rollback?
Well, Diane, President Trump is touting this as a trade deal, but this is really more of a pause. We don't know what this final deal is going to look like or what sort of concessions we're going to get from Beijing. But for 90 days, these countries are dramatically rolling back these tariffs. So the U.S. is lowering its staggering 145% tariffs on Chinese goods down to 30%, and Beijing is lowering them from 125% down to 10%. Now, this is a huge retreat for both countries. President Trump for weeks was adamant that he was leaving his tariffs in place just days before those negotiations happened over the weekend between the U.S. and China in Geneva. President Trump said he would not roll back tariffs in order to bring China to the negotiating table. Beijing had also been adamant, taking this tough, hard line towards the U.S., but this does come, Diane, as both economies were feeling the pain from these tariffs, with sources telling us that major retail executives had warned President Trump that his tariffs could lead to empty store shelves. China was also feeling the pain with a drop in manufacturing in China. But to be clear, we don't know the details about how this is all going to develop. So for businesses across the country, huge relief, but not entirely certain about what's going to come next.
And Joe, let's dig a little deeper into that impact for consumers, for businesses, and also investors.
It's going to be really welcome today in terms of the fact that financial markets have responded very warmly to the fact that the sides have stepped back from the brink. We will not see an economic decoupling here, which is really, I think, the main takeaway. Because if the Trump administration had not beaten the retreat here, we definitely were going to be in recession quite quickly. The odds of a recession declined a little bit today, and I think that's a good thing. We don't want to lose that fact here.
Selena, what about this executive order on drug prices? The president says we're no longer going to see people in other developed countries paying a fraction of what we pay here for the same prescription drugs. So what more do we know about how this is going to work?
Yeah, Diane, well, we still don't have a lot of details on this executive order, but the goal is to lower the cost of prescription drugs in this country, to get pharmaceutical companies to charge Americans the lowest price that they charge other countries. The president says this is about equalizing the playing field. But again, we don't have details about what drugs are going to be prioritized. U.S. officials say that they're going to look into the costliest drugs, and it will likely include weight loss drugs. But the president, he also tried to do something similar to this in his first term, but he was stopped by the courts. A judge determined that the president had not followed the proper procedure. So unclear how all of this is going to play out, but it could have a dramatic impact.
Joe, what's the potential big picture impact of this executive order if it does stand in the courts?
Okay, this is a very big deal. If it legally it survives, simply because we will be able to import drugs from other jurisdictions at a much lower cost. That will actually flatten the landscape for down market households. Now that's good. However, if you're an investor, what this means is revenues are going to narrow and profit margins are going to shrink in that industry. And we'll have to see whether this executive order, and that's all it is, it's an order, survives the political and legal fight going forward.
All right. Selena Wang, Joe Bruce, thank you both.